Hey ho, let's go. It's a mailbag show. This week on the Hapless Heroes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the mailbag episode, or probably one of multiple mailbag episodes of the Hapless Heroes podcast. I'm Francesco. I'm one of your hosts. You know me. You hopefully love me. And I have with me here tonight some of my favorite people in the world, and we're going to answer some of your burning questions about this campaign and the Hapless Heroes podcast in general. So let me introduce everybody I got with me tonight, and then let's get right into it. So I got Dave as Dave,
It burns when I answer.
Mike as Mike,
Hello.
Nicole as Nicole,
Crap, I'm not in character yet.
Zach as Zach, question mark?
How do I talk again?
John as John.
Mail.
Yeah, so we got some mail. We got a lot of questions from y'all in the last couple weeks that we've had the thread live in our Discord. Now, because of the fact that just the way the timing worked out with how we're recording these, right? Like the episode that essentially came out the day that we're recording this also mentioned you still had time to send questions in. So we're probably going to do another one of these just to make sure that if any others trickle in after after tonight, essentially when we're recording this, that we get to those if there are any, new ones that we want to get to. So, don't worry. If you don't hear your question tonight or an answer tonight, we're probably going to get to it another time.
I feel like anybody who actually wants to interact with us is on our Discord, and
that's where
got the announcement that way.
That's where all the questions we got were, right? Like we didn't get any through our social medias or email, and that's fine. I mean, like I said, our Discord is our community, and we love all of you so much. So thank you.
And if you're not on our Discord, where are you?
I fully feel like we're still getting postcards coming into our actual mailbox. I'm just waiting.
So let's just go ahead and start this. I mean, what I want to kind of do here is because there was a lot of questions that were directed more at me and Dave, and then others that were directed at the rest of the cast. I kind of want to split it up so that we kind of just go back and forth and alternate so that none of us, and especially myself, are rambling for too long. Because I know I have a tendency to just like talk a lot because I just have a lot to say all the time, and so I want to make sure that we're getting everybody sort of involved in the conversation as this episode goes on. So let's just start with, let's start with some of the easy ones. Let's start with some of the ones that I feel like were just like the most commonly asked questions, the ones we got a lot of, or were asked in many of different ways, but really we're all asking the same thing. And I think that's essentially like talking about the player characters and NPCs that we didn't get a chance to revisit, whether it's, some of the characters that, we just, the players weren't able to rejoin the show or, so that we weren't able to kind of see the rest of their story, or for some of the NPCs that we all loved and hated. So I think the question we got the most is obviously like what happened to Ezra and what happened to Hoblet. What I will say before, I guess we explore that too much is that, our plan was always essentially like to make sure that when we had folks who were out for an indefinite, but not necessarily at the time like known if it was a permanent like hiatus, we wanted to ensure that there was always going to be a way to reintroduce their character, right? Because I think the last time we saw Ezra was when he got sucked into that gem. Like an episode was at like 22 or 23 or something like that. He just kind of vanished.
A note on that is Ezra's hollow blade charm spear, I think he had. I still have the notes from that. I've been keeping for this whole 6 years. That is my divider for the most current grouping of notes and player sheets.
Oh wow, is that like the magic item he had that you've been hanging on to essentially for him?
Yeah, Paradel grabbed it when
it's interesting.
Succumbed.
Yeah. So like, like, I mean, our plan was always just to essentially like, if Joe was able to come back and wanted to come back, that, we would just be able to essentially just throw him in there. Like he'd just like somehow fall out of the gem, or he'd, some sort of interdimensional portal would open, or you'd encounter him in some weird fucked up place. Like it didn't like whatever. Like, we were just going to come up with it on the fly. Cause I think we've explained already, like a lot of what we do is very improvised. So we would have just, we would try to make sure that to let him know that the door was open. And the same went for Hoblet, right? That's why we were kind of dragging his body around at the end there, because we weren't sure if he was going to be able to make it back in. He wasn't sure either, because again, a lot of stuff's going on in our lives, and I just think that he just wasn't able to really like commit the time to the show anymore. So, and that's fine, like we would have always, we would have, if anything, he would have been part of the final battle, and if not, like I'd like to think personally, as far as Hoblet's concerned, that in this ideal future or whatever, time, like, fixed timeline that we're in now, that we've left the story in, that there is not a single superfluous E on any sign anywhere in the prime material plane. Anywhere.
That's what I call an ideal future.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to imagine. I'm not sure if anyone else has anything like that they imagine, like as far as like where these characters ended up, but like,
I figured he was just kind of hanging out with Boris and all them. Boris is. I feel like everybody kind of ended up in a similar place, but who knows? Like maybe the Do Pregnart Island hotel thing isn't that far away, kind of,
Right? Because like
I figured Ezra died. Honestly, no offense to Joe, but I figured that Ezra died.
Maybe, or maybe he's just sort of in this timeless plane, and one day, sometime in the future, someone's going to discover, this whatever like demi plane he's currently in, and rescue him. Who knows?
With it, I thought it was with the Raven Queen. That was my guess. It was always been my guess, was that the Raven Queen was doing something with him.
Yeah. I feel like Hoblet and Clagadin took Hans out for a boys' night. And like that's still happening. It's been like 350 years, and they're still like on like the second round of.
That's a great segue. That's a great segue, because we did get a question about the retainers, right? Specifically Hans, that Jarrell had with him. Obviously, like a lot of characters were left in sort of the broken timeline, right? The one where everything was sort of screwed by the time we left it. But Hans obviously came with you. So I guess like, did you have anything in mind, John, of like what you think he might have gotten up to, right? With like, being essentially left in Clangadin's care for an extended period of time. Like, would Jarrell have gone back for him and like made him a paladin of himself, essentially?
Yeah. I mean, if he's still alive, probably. Like, I'm under the assumption that those characters who we never heard from again aren't like, again, until you see the body kind of characters. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the most concise answer. I mean, I know we got questions also about like Dilbertrum. I think everyone remembers Dilbertrum. He was like essentially the stooge.
Who was that?
To monitor you guys. Now,
he absolutely left his ass behind in the bad
I don't know who you're
timeline.
talking about.
Yes, he was left behind in the bad timeline. That was genuinely the last time that y'all, because remember when you were essentially transported to Quinn's daddy's realm, Dilbertrum was not with you, and that was the last time we saw him. So we're not sure if he was included in this, again, fixed or like new forged like timeline and future that
would
you guys
any
have
of us have thought of him?
I'd say we were pretending he was not there so hard that we forgot he existed. So
I thought he was still with us.
So what's really funny is because again, the Dilbertrum thing was asked by multiple users, but Thessie chimed in today actually, well, before we started recording this, where he's like, "I'd like to think that they pretended he wasn't there when they recreated the perfect future," and I think that honestly, that's pretty emblematic of what of the heroes. The other thing I had in mind, I guess, because again, we joked about, but it was pretty true about the fact that like this campaign took 3 fucking years to actually end, as far as when we first set out to actually end it, right? So, I had initially intended, like I remember Dave and I think even Mike brought this up at one point, like we were joking around about how like at the end of the campaign, it's like, we find out that it's Dilbertrum that's been telling the story the whole time, right? And he like just shuts the book on the adventure or whatever. Like that was one of like the things we had in mind as far as a potential like end scene for this campaign.
Yeah.
Because like, Quinn's writing his own story of like an accounts of what happened, but like I think, Dilbertrum probably had a much different account of all the debauchery and idiocy that you guys got up to.
His would have been wrong.
At least up to the point that he was able to observe, right? So, that's kind of my guess. But yeah, I don't know if he actually exists in this future. I'm pretty sure the heroes just pretended like he wasn't there long enough that, I don't think he even exists
He kept
anymore.
asking us to do it. Eventually, we listened.
Eventually, y'all did.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. What other? I guess. Okay. Since we're talking on the topic of like NPCs and things like that. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't talk about Mort. Because like when we last left Mort, he essentially ran off with the Wild Bunch.
Yeah.
To start their own endeavors.
They're still touring, I imagine.
Off into the sunset, right?
Yeah. And I would imagine that he's still with the Wild Bunch in this ideal future, touring around and doing his wacky ass Mort thing. I know like when I talk to Massimo and like we reflect on all the wacky shit we got up to, right? I mean, like, man, that was just a different time in our lives, right? And Mort was just such a chaotic and random and strange character, right? That's just such a, like, it was interesting because like Massimo is not like, not at all like Morton Mac, right? But he just managed to harness all that chaotic energy into this one place. So I'd like to imagine he's just, he's still kind of living that lifestyle. I always told Massimo, like, if he ever wanted to come back, right, we would just like essentially create an adventure hook or something like that where, the Wild Bunch is in town, and go from there. Or if at that point, or at the point where we had transitioned to a more planar campaign, he's a wild magic sorcerer, so it would have been a pretty easy and convenient way to explain how he managed to find himself to wherever, we would have thrown his character back in.
Yeah, he was pretty well resolved. I mean, I see him as a somehow less stable Jim Morrison, but
Yeah, and I think that's probably why, like, because like I think that the questions more come up about Ezra and Hoblet, because I think that we were, if of all the characters, I guess, that departed the show, I think that Mort was one of the ones that we were able to really kind of actually give a sort of resolution to. Because like Massimo was very clear about the fact that, he was just like getting into other things and, his life was changing a lot because like, he's my younger brother, right? So like he was going through a lot of different things and, figuring out his career and figuring out all these other aspects of his life. And so, he just didn't have the time to devote to this show anymore. But, I think that if we're talking about just real quick about like season 2, like I've talked to him a little bit and he might like show up maybe at some point as a guest or as like a, just like a voice that we're going to drop in at some point as a surprise. Like you never know. He's still open to that. Cause he does miss a little bit of it. Right. Cause it's pretty fun. He's like, been really just like so surprised at how much like how much our audience has grown since he's been on the show too. And he still has no access to his Discord account and really has no care to do that either. So whatever, but he's doing well and he gives everyone his best, I should say. But so we were talking about NPCs, and I guess like I want to answer this question that was asked of like let's start with who was everyone's favorite NPC? Let's start with favorite. Let's switch to positive. So I'm gonna switch to y'all for a second. I guess like we'll just go around. I guess like whoever's ready or has one like ready to fire. Like who is your favorite NPC?
Does Granny Smasher count?
Yeah, I mean you played her, but yes.
Yeah, I like Granny Smasher.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
she was old.
She said as much.
Yeah, she was old and she said so.
It's a very Jarrell answer, but Shalandria had a couple of really great interactions with the group.
Yeah. Shalandria, aka Shelly from just outside of High Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She was actually the one that came to my mind. She was the one that was angry with Hoblet, right?
Always. Okay, I mean, all of you, in fact. Yeah.
Well,
blasphemers with all of us, but really,
blasphemers.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Hoblet broke that door, like the holy threshold.
Isn't she the one that I slapped with a stake when I like first joined the campaign?
Oh my god.
She might have.
You might have. Well, it was like shortly after we were doing
tiger
all that
meat
stuff
incident.
Yes. Yes.
Captain Stanky Von Rattling beef. That's all.
Oh my god! Yeah, that was.
Yeah, for characters I invented, that was probably a pretty good one.
Stakely Von Rattling beef, the second,
the third, son of Odifron Von Rattling beef.
I see. Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorites.
Phil's witches were great.
Phil, yeah. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. When Phil did the it was obviously like an analog to Hocus Pocus, right? And I just thought that was so clever. And he really, like, I mean, when Phil commits to a bit, he really commits to a bit. Like, we've joked around about it a lot, but like Phil is like like when it comes to like when he prepares for a D&D session, this man like puts in 150%. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has everything laid out, and like, I felt bad. Like, I did warn him about, the fact that it's like, don't prepare too much because everyone will shove things off the rails very fast.
No,
but like, man, when he came in hot with those witches, and it was just chef's kiss. Phil, I know you're listening to this. Chef's kiss, my guy. Those were phenomenal NPCs.
Yeah, the witches were A+ material.
I mean, I liked Boris because it was just a funny gag that eventually became, a player character. I mean, I talked about that last episode, but I always loved Boris. I feel like, I mean, I personally liked Dobritrum because I loved just always like I loved having a vehicle to add sort of like a check, just a check. You know what I mean? Just a check. No, the annoyance was the clip, and I want to get to that because we got a good question about that, Zach, and I feel like you and I should talk about that in a second. But I want to save it for a sec. But yeah, like I don't know. I thought that was really good. Who else? I mean, when Katie played the queen and like emasculated Hoblet, that was fucking hilarious. That was episode 17, which is also still one of my favorite episodes. It was also when Mike, when Nat won that persuasion check, or that like my insight check in front of all of you, and we all just fucking lost our goddamn minds. Like, that's still one of my favorite moments of the show, even though it happened so long ago.
Not my favorite, but for obvious reasons.
I Nat Wanda, you did great. You were very happy about it, right? Yeah, but like, yeah, it was just excellent.
We had a really good Raven Queen. I mean, I'm very biased, obviously.
Right,
but,
yeah. So your wife played the Raven Queen.
Yeah.
And like, she was, I remember her, she was like very nervous
when she played the Raven Queen either.
Right.
Yeah,
she was very, I remember she was very nervous.
Played the Raven Queen.
Yes. Technically, yes.
Yeah, because I remember she was very nervous when she came over because, like, she wasn't like, she had never really, done like anything in front of a microphone before or anything like that. We were just always like, listen, like, take your time, like, think about your answers, because like, the magic of editing, right, will make anyone sound like they know exactly what they're doing, right? So just like, think about how you want to interact. Like, if you need pointers or notes, like, we're here to guide you, right? And she did great.
Yeah. I think if we were to bring her back, she'd do even better now because we taught her.
Well, because she's played with us, because like, because Phil was running like a thing out of his house, and she came along and was like playing a character. It was great.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, it's like, yeah, I definitely really liked that. That like that we were able to kind of bring her on as a sort of like a guest to play, one of these like significant characters, at least in that part of the story. All right. So, did everyone mention a favorite? Nicole, did you have a favorite, at least for the ones that you personally encountered?
I know you're going to talk about it later, but like Clippy or the clip was, I appreciate the clip for
I mean, who does
like an NPC character.
How dare you?
Also, I mean, a little bit Filbert, because Filbert reminds me of me when I was 13.
I think we talked about Filbert in the last episode, but like,
so we did, but I guess I'll just say, like, I mean, obviously with taking a lot of liberties and exaggerations and like, really, like a lot of things, but like I did take some personal inspiration of just like the angst that I, had felt as a teenager, right? As a young teenager in the world, and like channeled that into that, quote unquote villain. Because I just, and I remember like getting some comments from some of our listeners who were just like, yo, that one hit a little close to home, dude. Like, that was hard to listen to, because it was just like, oh God, like, I hate this kid because he reminds me of me. And that's why I'm so proud of that character, if anything, because like to be able to evoke an actual emotional response beyond just annoyance with a character, I think is a mark of achievement of like a really well told character.
He was honestly our most believable villain.
Yeah, and but that was our goal from the beginning, right, Dave? It was like to make Filbert an actual, like, a real, like, a villain with motivations that and an origin story that wasn't necessarily like, I didn't want someone who was just hell bent on destruction. It was more just like, a kid who just made a mistake, but unfortunately that mistake was catastrophic.
He's my number 3 favorite NPC.
Wait, what's your number 2 then?
The hamster.
The hamster. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I appreciate that. Thank you. I did love the ham. I remember being, again, I feel like we've made a like a funny running gag of like Zach suggests something, I'm like, no, and then I just do it anyways.
Not an NPC, but out of that, Mr. Bouchonks.
Oh yeah, Mr. Bouchonks.
You guys remember Jimmy John, right?
Oh yeah, Jimmy John. There was also
he was on the ship.
Who Jimmy John was
on the ship. There was
on
Toast. Toast Anger Grundleplin's the third.
Yeah. The Dwarfson.
The Dwarfson.
Jed. With Jed's dead. Jed
right? Dim. Yeah, Jed Dim is dead. Oh yeah,
Jed Dim. How did I forget Jed Dim?
Fuck. Can we talk about Jed Dim for a second? Okay, we had plans for Jed. So before we realized that this was going to be like a quote unquote like planar campaign, right? Like we were going to initially design the end game of this of like the airship armada is built and y'all invade the Crucible lands, right? And like we wanted us that Jed Dim as the captain of the airship was he was essentially going to be like our Kenny from like South Park, where he would die, but then just mysteriously come back. And so like we had like an actual D6, like a rolling table of what personality he would reincarnate with. And the last one we had rolled was essentially like Macho Man Randy Savage.
Right. So all you do is put your teeth hard together and talk through them like this. Yeah.
See? And so like that was like a little like role playing like guide for him. It was just like every time he dies, you roll a D6 and whatever it lands on, that's the personality he respawns with.
I've got the table somewhere in one of my notebooks.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. That was some pretty funny shit. I think you had a plan for Toast too, right? Wasn't he supposed to go do some sort of like betrayal kind of thing?
Yeah,
and we
he
just
was
never really got to it.
Mastermind rogue that was going to be like a plant from Angus Core, I think, or something like that. Like, he was going to have layers and depth under the
right. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, but it's just again, it's so many things we didn't get to. We had we have a question about that too. About it's like like were there just things that we never got to?
Yeah.
And when I say that there are so many that we don't have enough time to talk about them, like there are so many that we don't have enough time to talk about them.
We mounted an armory of Chekhov's guns on the wall, and if we shot them all, we'd be here for another 3 years.
There's an NPC that caused me a great amount of strife for a good portion of like the middle of this campaign.
So perfect. Let's go ahead and segue right into what was everyone's least favorite NPC.
So it wasn't that she was my least favorite. It was just she created a lot of angst for me. And that was Tessa Southwind. And the whole story arc.
Dude, and Phil, if Phil were here, he would say that was probably his favorite. Because I remember actually he met, like after we finished recording last time, he had put in our little green room chat, like, P.S. I love you, Tessa.
Yeah. I would say Tessa was for Quinn, it was like a anticlimactic moment because he meets his sister and then literally has to deal with this like love triangle that he's part of, but he's not actually part of it. And do
you remember what I said last time we recorded, where like we would find ways to pit you and Hedrick against each other?
Oh, yeah.
Like that was one of the easiest, easiest ways.
Plot point.
And Phil handed that to me like on a fucking silver platter because he started hitting on her immediately, right? Like, and so I was like, okay, like, yes, we're gonna see this through because this is fucking hilarious, and you are getting so worked up over this.
I loved it as the character and the player. I was like, just please don't, not my sister.
Would anyone else have like an NPC that got under their skin, that really grinded their gears?
Oh, go ahead.
Filbert, because he reminded me of me when I was 13.
Right, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if it's like the same kind of thing, but Saint Cuthbert.
Saint Cuthbert the cudgel.
We brought that whole joke back. Like he was just a giant pain in the ass for the most part, too.
Yeah, because he was just like so dumb. Yeah. It was fantastic.
He's still part of Jarrell forever.
One of your spiritual advisors.
I don't think I had a least favorite one.
No, you weren't like annoyed with Kip or anything like that at any point in time?
No, they were all good. I liked them all.
Yeah, nothing I didn't like.
Unless Clippy counts.
I mean, yeah, we did mention Clippy before, so yeah, I guess Clippy counts.
Yeah, I hate Clippy.
Do you want to just settle that really quick? Okay, we got a question.
Sure, let's bring up Clippy, because that's my least favorite thing in this entire thing.
But so the question, Altair, one of our community moderators, asked this question. He's like, "Did the ongoing tensions of Clippy lead to any off-air conversations about it? At times in some of those episodes, it felt like there was genuine annoyance and frustration beyond just the character moments." So, I guess I'll say my piece. And maybe yours differs. I know that you had expressed some frustration as far as just like, is this really operating in the boundaries of like, how we'd establish this clip,
sure.
right? And I will say that, there's ways that I wish I had handled that maybe a little bit differently. I just, I was just thinking on the fly and stuff like that. I'm not always able to come up with my best response, but we were already operating in a realm way outside of what this clip was even intended to be sort of used for, right? Because like if you look at the item itself, like it requires a DC 13 intelligence save for you to think this is probably not a great idea, right? Or not a great suggestion. And Larlock was never going to fail that. Like never. Right? So I was already trying to figure out a way to make Clippy impactful in the fight. And also highlight the fact that this is an evil cursed object, right? And when an evil cursed object is interacting with an evil like demigod lich type thing, like it's going to just suggest the most destructive option possible, because what else could it possibly suggest that it's going to like fuck up the situation more than what this guy's already doing, right?
Right.
So can I input something? So my vision of what that looked like was I thought of Aladdin, right? Iago and Jafar. That Iago is going to have these evil, horrible thoughts, but they're never going to be more evil than what Jafar was going to do anyway. That's how I envisioned it.
So Zach, I'm not sure if you wanted to comment, just on your own feelings there.
I was just happy with the ability to just weaponize the thing and shoot it off and have it come back into play from a creative side of things. I just was happy with that. And I feel like the point of Clippy was to be as annoying as possible. And so I loved how we were able to weaponize it, try to use it against our enemies, and it was still annoying me.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so and there's been a lot of times I think throughout the course of this show where it may have felt like there were like some like actual tensions between like us as the players of this game, because we all just get so immersed and involved in like the things that are happening, right? So like when someone suggests something stupid, we all get like all up in arms and this and that, but like that never really extends like beyond the session or because it's again like we're all just like we immerse ourselves in our characters so much, even when we're having these out of character banters about like the situation that's happening, right? Where it's still from the perspective of like, listen, you're fucking up like this thing that my character wants to do, and like god damn it, like I just don't know how else to like release this frustration except for just to say like, dude, like just please let me do this first, please just let me try this thing first,
some whatever it is, to negate some of it, because we had to do that sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like somebody would want to do something that's so detrimental but so in character that like somebody had to stop Mort or somebody had to stop Pregnart. Like those were fun.
Yeah, so I just feel like I just wanted to address that, right? Like, I love you, Zach. I hope that I didn't like actually piss you off that night.
No, I feel like when we're doing this, I try to like tap into sort of like a different side of me, or just tap into maybe the worst parts of my personality to make things more entertaining. And there's definitely a solidly real antagonistic part of my personality that comes out in this podcast that I
frequently directed at Fran.
I try to limit that in my real life to varying levels of success. But
it is pretty insane how much of your it's like Jake, that guy in Discord, right? Like our friend Jake made a comment where he's like, I feel like Zach made a hobby of getting under Fran's skin. And I think but that was part of like our running gag, is we kind of already had this silent agreement between each other, right? Where it was like you were like, I knew you were going to do these things. And there was never a point in time where I was like, Zach, can you please just stop?
And we never do that outside of this podcast. Like
no, when we hang out, when we hang out, right? We're just friends. We're just chilling. We're listening to music. We're like playing games. We're fucking, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't like none of that stuff. Like none of that exists outside of like this environment because it's just this is where we just let let go of all that other shit.
When my personal recording starts rolling, I get personal. I want to be annoying. I want to throw as many monkey wrenches into as many works as I can muster.
And with Fran being like the actual rules and law and order of the universe, it makes perfect sense.
Well, and like the producer of the show and things like that. Because like Zach also like, we use a combination of like the bot recordings we use and also the local audio we capture on our own, right? When we do this show. And like, every now and again, like, when Zach's muted in Discord or whatever, like, if he's clearing his throat or doing something like that, right? Like in the local recording, all that still comes through. So every now and again, I get a little hello from him. Like when I'm editing the episode.
I'm about to blow my nose. Here I go.
Yeah. And so like, I'll hear that in the audio track and be like, oh, hi, Zach from the past. Right. And then just like, cut that out or whatever. Right. But like, so like we're always doing these like little things with each other because like Zach's while Dave and I have been the host of this show, like I know Zach has always been kind of, there in the backdrop too, like providing a lot of creative input, a lot of suggestions, and a lot of like, like a lot of the structure of the show, honestly, Zach, came from sort of like your suggestion too of like how we've sort of reformatted like our outro, like if you really if you really, really love us, right? The right now you like us, Sally Field and the whole deal, right? That's been your bit for so long now.
That's called doing the Sally Field.
Right, the Sally Field. We call it doing a Zach when you're not here, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, does anyone have a Zach for us?
Yeah.
Because like that's like your thing. I mean, you wrote the.
I like gimmicks. I like a lot of gimmicks.
You composed the intro theme for the show. You composed the outro theme for the show. And so it's like you've been just as much of like a creative sort of like part of this show as Dave and I have because you've done all these like supplementary things that have helped us sort of like find our identity, right? That we talked about last time. And so like I just want to make sure that we give credit to that.
Thanks,
because,
Fran.
That's important. Like you've really done a lot for this show. So like, there is no animosity, there is no frustration, but like I definitely see how it could have been read that way.
We have done a good job of balancing that, but there's a reason why we've done this as friends for 6.5
so
years.
long. Right, because we can have that kind of like back and forth with each other and not take it personally, right? Because
it's plan on doing it indefinitely. So
right, yeah, exactly. You're never going to change, and neither am I, and that's just how it goes.
And speaking of which, I have some treats lined up for the rest of this episode. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, actual treats!
No, come on, please don't. He's holding for the audience.
Home,
Zach is holding up
Laffy Taffy. Right next to me here, and
I'm not sure if anyone remembers from listening back to the show. I'm not sure if I left
I don't know
any
if
of
anybody
those.
wants to hear me just chew Laffy Taffy into the mic for another half an hour.
Please don't.
All right, we'll see.
So that's another thing, especially when we used to meet in person too, because like, I didn't have the control over like muting people's microphones and things like that when we were all sitting at the same table. So like, we had a rule where it's like, listen, like I know that like in a typical casual D&D session when you don't have microphones in front of your face, like, yeah, people are snacking, like it's a very just like we're hanging out playing a board game for several hours, right? But like, in the context of when you're making a radio show, you have to be very conscious about the other sort of extra sounds that you are producing with yourself.
Yep.
Right. And like, there's only so much of that you can control because especially those hot summer days, I don't have AC in my apartment, right? So like, we had the fan running in the background. We had all these like icy beverages that were clinking around. Like you can only deal with so much because like, I'm sorry.
Beer.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so, we just try to do our best to limit that, but Zach would always make a point of like, if there was any sort of candy or food, like he would bring it to the table and chew directly into the microphone as soon as we all put our headphones. As soon as we put our headphones on,
3 to 5 main times.
There were definitely more than that.
Because I'm funny, I limited it to the amount of times I did it. Because I'm not an asshole, I didn't do it more.
Yeah.
Speaking of creative things that Zach brings to the podcast as well, I feel like a lot of the puns in a lot of the episodes were started by him, and we all just kind of like.
So that's actually another question we had, and
I just have a stupid nonsense brain, but thank you for turning that into a good thing. No, I would just say that I like coming to a project and having sort of like I have like a good editing eye sometimes. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard for me to start up something by myself, which is why like Dave and Fran are like invaluable to me. Like
Mm.
having just like a project that I can just jump into and start getting creative within is like wow. It's just like a little playground for me creatively. I love
Mm-hmm.
having that. And this is just one of the best I've ever taken part in. Um, and anything that I can do is just like I love playing second fiddle to like a main creative voice sometimes, and that's really fun for me.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. What I will say, because that actually ties into some things, because we got a question. Thessie asked this today too, where he's like, he's not sure if it actually fits as a mailbag question, but I think it does. Where he's like, have you ironed out who will be in season 2 and what the DM situation will be? And I did say mostly, because we're still ironing out who is they going to be able to commit to the next campaign full time. What I will say is that anyone who may not be able to, like, one of the philosophies that we're walking into this next season with is that we always kind of want to leave room to be able to have like rotating guests come in and out of the stories that we're telling, so that like for friends who can't commit full time but still want to like jump in and have fun and play a little D&D every now and again, like we want to make sure that there's opportunities to like write in like temporary characters or recurring characters or whatever it is, to make sure that like we can also bring even some of our other friends in to like just add some other flair or surprises or things like that. And also, another philosophy that we're using for this is that while Dave and I are sort of like, I think that the way we've always kind of done things is that Dave and I tend to be the primary, like, we're the ones who flesh out a lot of the finer details of the world and like how the rules of the game apply to them. Right. Cause like we have, I guess, between us, probably the longest DM experience of anyone else here. But what I want to change the approach for next season is that like we want to open it up so that and structure our storytelling in a way where if anyone wants to at any point be like, you know what, I want to DM a story arc. I have a great idea. We're going to have a lot of our cast members be part of the actual world building of the next season. And so like with everybody sort of clued in on the details and the wider sort of like all the factions in play, all the things that are, we're writing out, like having that knowledge base and that shared knowledge base, like I had mentioned last episode, like, well, we want to be able to enable anyone who wants to DM to be able to DM a story arc. I know Zach said he's got ideas. I know even Nicole has approached me and said that she has an idea for a potential story arc she wants to run in the future.
Yes, I am my own special case because I have a fantastic idea, I'm pretty sure, and I have no desire to DM a story arc, and yet this idea is at this point so intricate that I'm probably the only person that can DM it the way I've fleshed it out now without me having to do a whole lot of writing, and I'm not. So I'm going to do it. Stay tuned next season to watch
Fuck
me
yeah.
possibly flail
and that's
away.
How you do it is you jump off the metaphorical cliff and figure out the landing on the way down.
Yeah, and I think I'm doing this exactly as every DM does. I'm over preparing with way too much stuff, and you guys are going to 10 minutes into the story veer off in a direction I wasn't expecting, and I'm going to have to throw all those notes up in the air like a cartoon. Right? That's how you DM your first story?
Yes, I feel like it's a rite of passage for anyone who DMs for this.
To over-prepare the first one, and yeah.
So actually, this is a good segue for the questions we got about the Halloween episodes, right? Because we got some questions regarding like, hey, are we going to continue doing that stuff, right? Because like, we got a lot of questions around that. So I want to kind of address all of those. First is, are we going to keep doing those kinds of things where we like essentially feature someone else as a DM or just do something a little bit different for a Halloween episode? And the short answer is, I want to
do as much of that as possible.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Based on what I just said, right? If giving everyone the opportunity if they want to be able to DM a thing.
What we need to do organizationally is like make a calendar and like
because that's really the hardest thing about this.
We've got like a scheduling like channel in our Discord. The back end of our Discord, sorry fans, is maybe a little bit more feature rich than the listeners are used to. We've got a lot of cool stuff. But anyway, we've got a scheduling channel just for us. And I feel like part of the scheduling channel should be like the record date and the projected air date and what we should like theme it around possibly.
So I've kept a personal calendar of that a little bit throughout the last 6.5 years. But yeah, I want to make a shared calendar for all of us to be able to kind of see all those things. And because like that's been the challenge, right? Because of the fact that the way that we record this, right, especially when we're going to start this new campaign, when we started this campaign, we had a bunch of episodes in our quote unquote, like we call it the hopper or the backlog or whatever. So like, the time that we record them versus the day that they release, there could be weeks, if not months, between when we actually recorded the episode and when it's actually releasing. So we're going to,
except for the ones where we just climb inside of your Bluetooth speaker and we act it out real time.
Yeah, but it's kind of weird when you do that. So like, I'd have to ask you to stop.
Only if we really love ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so like we're going to try to structure things so that, we have a good idea of, okay, just having more awareness and like, more intention towards, okay, like, of like the time surrounding that of like, hey, like we're getting close to like October. And with like, based on how many episodes we have in our backlog, we're getting close to maybe actually recording our Halloween episode that's going to release on Halloween, even if we're recording it in like September or something like that, or even like, if we're lucky, even August. But so we had to make sure that we're prepared to do that, right? To make sure that whenever this episode's releasing, that like, we're going to hit that timeline. And I want to keep those kind of concise because I think that, one of the things we joked about last time, right? Like Phil kind of had his like 2-episode arcs when he did his Halloween episodes, right? But John had like essentially like a whole fucking story arc, and it was never intended to be that way. But John was the first. John was really like the first true like proper rotate DM Halloween special, and so we didn't really know how long it was going to take because I didn't really know what John had prepared
for it to be that long. I made up an enemy on the other side of the wall, and it took us like 8 episodes to get there. So
right. So like we just never really know, because especially for folks who haven't DM for this particular group before, like it's one thing when you're a player, but then to be on the other side of the screen and figure out how to wrangle these idiots into like actually like finding where the rails are and committing to following that direction is very difficult. So like we're going to keep refining that, and like if it takes 2 episodes, great. If it takes more than that, whatever, we'll figure it out, right? Because like again, we want to be a lot more flexible with this next campaign as far as like how we structure, how we tell this story, right? And these stories. So expect that to continue. So the next question was, what was everyone's favorite Halloween special?
Wait, which ones were there? There was
there was the one where I did everyone's personal nightmares. There was the one where John, we did the monster party.
Right.
The monster mash, right? There was Phil's Halloween special with the witches and the vampire.
Which was
we
so
did more than 3. I mean,
the event happened right around Halloween. Didn't we drop that around there too?
Yeah, I mean, that was like our 100th episode too. Yeah, I think it was, right? But it wasn't like a Halloween special. That was more just like we acknowledged that it was happening at Halloween.
What happened during that one again?
The event?
Yeah.
That was the inauguration.
Vecna busts onto the scene.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The bubble shits out our airship.
I mean, it's hard for me to pick a favorite because I think they were all great in their own ways. But like, because of the fact that Phil over prepares for everything, like just like the fact that like we kind of gave him the challenge to figure out how to fit his preparation in 2 episodes, like, for better or worse, like he fucking nailed it. So again, Phil, shout out. I know you're listening. Like, well done, sir. Because the witches were brilliant. The vampire was hilarious. And I think that Phil learned a valuable lesson that night about how to improv.
Yeah.
And I think we did one more Halloween. I'm not sure if it was a Halloween special, but we did revisit the monster party one more time to figure out what that battle, like how that battle was playing out of like the invasion that was happening there. But I can't remember if that was actually a Halloween thing or if we just kind of cut to that as like a bonus thing.
I think we cut to it, didn't we? Like it was during
some sort of absence. It was during the COVID stuff. And like when we were all kind of figuring out what the fuck we were going to do with the show and how we were going to readjust.
I'm scrolling through my own notes, and I have something here that says Halloween, Andrew the Orc Assassin, Sir Dellum Room, Dave Potted Plant, Hondo, John looking for drink, 24 plus 12 plus 5 equals 41. And those are my notes.
That was the secondary one, the secondary party of the, you're right. You're absolutely right, Nicole. where we kind of cut the camera back to what was happening in the Crucible lands. Because again, at that point in time when we were telling that story, I was still intending to involve the Crucible lands in the end game of our campaign, right?
Yeah.
So like I wanted to make sure that we had another vignette of what it looked like over there, so that like those guys like Hondo and everybody walking out from that portal were able to sort of just see the devastation that had happened.
I really like. Oh, what were you gonna say, Fred?
No, that was it. That was my parting thought on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like it's hard to pick again because I really loved how like concise and bite-sized Phil's was. It was just you could show the plan, you can show like the focus of like the direction of the whole thing, and he just sort of like picked a moment and just wrapped it up. But I really liked John's too because there was a lot of room to just go crazy, go off the rails, and have the entire thing get away from us completely, and have
so like
what was maybe planned to be like 2 or 3 episodes to be 6 or 7 or whatever it happened.
Right. So they're all beautiful in their own ways, right? And like I think I did my Halloween special in 1 episode, right? Because like I was just sort of like I want to just explore what everyone's personal nightmare would be in this current state of things, right? But like that's more of like for me that's more of a footnote because like that was sort of like the start of the Halloween stuff and the acknowledgement and the doing things in spirit of Halloween, and then like we really started to. It was really with John's that we then just leaned hard into Halloween every year from then on. So,
I think with the witches and the vampire Phil's was the most Halloween-y Halloween episode.
Yes, like he really committed to the theme. I think the hardest.
But
although I will say Monster Mash, I mean that's pretty on brand too.
Yeah.
So
I just liked exploring the psyche of Liger Silverschleuder.
I also
I don't know if we mentioned. Sorry.
Well, with John's, I wasn't there for the beginning of it, and so I entered into it having to create a whole character before we could podcast, and I created Bev, and I have always wanted to go back to Bev, and I really loved Bev. So
Bev,
that was
Leo,
a great thing that came out of.
Yeah.
That was the greatest thing that came out of Monster Mash for me because I got to still be part of Monster Mash, but also
be a
create
human
a character Bev that who knows where she is right now.
And some of the interns, right? I think we didn't really address the interns, but like I'd like to think that maybe there's like at least for most of them some version of themselves in the ideal future. But again, the interns were
except for one.
We created them to manage the keep, which we never really went back to because, again, the campaign just went a different direction. Because so many of the ideas, the ship, the keep, the airship, like all those things that we had, were all just like, okay, we want to give the party assets and things to manage, and then whatever they tend to care about, that's what we're going to lean into, right? And it's just that because the campaign went so many different directions, there were just some things that we never really expanded upon any further because we had moved on from it at that point and we're just focused on other things.
Well, I feel like the main point of the keep was just to give us all a chance to describe what our characters' bedrooms looked like.
Yeah, there you go, right? And then also, it was a great sort of set piece for our early intern adventures because the interns were essentially charged with taking care of the place while the heroes were gone, even though we barely spent any fucking time there anyways. That was a great story vehicle.
We didn't really have power creep. We had like a scope creep though, where the scope of our campaign kept expanding so quickly that we outgrew our assets. Like a keep is great for regional heroes. We were not regional heroes for very long. An airship's a great tool for world heroes. We became interplanar heroes not long after the airship. Like there was
actually, Dave, you know what? That's a great question.
Up with us.
Or that brings up a good question that we were brought up. So if looking back in the last 6.5 years, right? Like I guess like let's address 2 of these questions. How hard has it been to DM for like a podcast format, right? And for this group of characters versus like, a normal session, right? And I'll answer some of this too, as well as like, are there things that you would have, like, if you were to put yourself in your shoe, in with the knowledge you have today in your position 6.5 years ago, right? Are there things you would have done differently or dramatically differently?
All right. So to speak to the first, at least for my part, in fact, let me scroll up so I've got that on here, and that's the first Thessie question there. That like for DMing for a podcast instead of a normal game, one of my main concerns is keeping in my head, is this good radio? Really, Zach has a great ear for that, so we tend to listen to him on that a lot. But I couldn't DM this entirely like a normal game because this is a radio show. I can't just go killing characters all willy nilly. Like our listeners are attached to these characters. We want them to succeed. So, I'm a little less worthy adversary and a little more story guide. Keeping things, I don't want to say coherent, but I guess moving while being a little more supportive to my player characters than I would be if there were no microphones. Like, I'll kill a motherfucker, in game.
Yeah, because that's been the thing, right? Because we have all these characters that people love where it's like, we wanted to create the element of challenge and danger. I think we were never necessarily opposed to a player death, but it would be, in this kind of format, it would be something that we would actually talk to the player about beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Like I had always intended for Felix. I had always intended for Felix to die at the end of this campaign in some way, shape, or form. I didn't really imagine it would happen in the way it did, but I'm glad it did because I think we were able to resolve my patron thing finally, right? But, this ties into another question we got about what our average, our standard D&D session length is, right? Because of the fact that we're doing this for a podcast, right? We wanted to make sure that every episode was in sort of a consumable time frame. And, for us, that kind of felt like an hour and we kind of started leaning more into making sure we left out to find cliffhangers where possible and things like that to kind of create that episodic feel, right? That serial feel of we're just going, we're going through and telling the story and leaving you off on a story beat and then coming back to it, for the next one. But the sessions themselves, I mean, we'd get together from I would say maybe roughly 3 hours or so,
no and more than 4. Yeah.
And we do 2 episodes in that time frame. And that includes our breaks, that includes the things that we cut out, just some of the redundant rules, lookups that we've done to remind ourselves of some things. I keep some of those things in, or maybe I make those explanations more concise, right? It's just getting everything down to a point where it's more listenable and there's less of just those awkward breaks where we're still doing stuff, but you can't really hear that, right? So yeah, but it's still about 3 hours, which I think is an average D&D session, right? 3 to 4 hours is about average for a D&D one session.
Yeah. Working adults playing on a work night, this is a normal, this would be normal session size or at least manageable session size. And if it was weekends, some people go 6-8 hours, with breaks on their during weekend sessions. But
Nicole, you were going to comment?
Don't have that.
Oh, when you were talking about the editing of sessions and what you do with that, I was also going to say this is just kind of a fun fact for the people that are listening to this particular episode. Between 2 episodes, sometimes has to be cut out of the middle of an episode, depending on if somebody has a short errand they have to run at that particular moment.
Right. Yeah. So and we try to keep all those things in check. We're always looking at the timers and things like that to kind of help figure out, okay, I got about 5 to 20 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes to play with here. So I want to make sure that within that time I get us to a story beat that we can leave off on, right? Or leave a cliffhanger for. How do I embellish this thing? Even if it's a red herring cliffhanger, right? Just something where we can kind of give it a good break. Because I think early on, that was one of the lessons we had to learn was how to kind of condense and structure these sessions so that we could have those cleaner cuts, because we were not so good at that at the beginning of this show. I can say that for sure.
Well, and as a player too, when you play at a normal table, right, you can kind of do some of the math work and some of the preparation while you're playing. With this, it's a little different. We have to kind of come to the table ready to go, because if we don't, we extend that time and we make that time less manageable for Fran and Dave.
And there's a lot of trust between us where it's I trust you to be able to take care of your character. I know early on for some of the folks who had never played D&D before, I was managing all of their character sheets for a little while just to make sure that when we sat down to record, everyone had all of the relevant information in front of them and we could just do it seamlessly and smoothly. But then as the players got more comfortable with how the game works, how to find the information about leveling up and this and that, through some guidance, I was able to sort of relinquish that control, because I'm also a bit of a control freak sometimes. I think everyone knows this about me. So I was able to just sort of let go of that, let you guys manage your own stuff, and then just like let me know. I expect you to let me know if there's something your character wants in particular, or if there's something like a new feature or thing that you want to let me know about because you want to be like involve it in like a thing. We have these kind of conversations on the side just to make sure that like we're fully utilizing these characters and giving everybody that creative input.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me see. There's a lot of other great questions.
I think we still had that question in there of what would we change for season 2, knowing what we knew about season 1. I don't know if we addressed that one.
Yeah. Go ahead if you got something for that. Then.
I mean, kind of, it's playing a lot into how we are preparing for season 2, which is prepare a better and more comprehensive. I don't know if we've really used this term, but I would call it like the World Bible, like our world guide, establishing more of these places and factions and stuff in advance instead of firing these things off from the hip, which we did a lot of. Like we really had a couple of things in the Vesh Kingdom fleshed out.
We had paragraphs here and there,
a paragraph or two. We're going way past that. It's a lot more preparation now, and I think if we do that, we can have a world that.
The way I imagine the next season, as far as like how I visualize it, if I were to like give it some sort of analog, it's like we're creating all of the set pieces, all of like the background lore and all those things, but keeping it agnostic in a way where it's like, okay, here's all of this information, and now we can just take these set pieces, take this information, and just plop them in when they're ready to be revealed, and then suddenly we're just going to sort of be building the world out as we play through it with already that backing knowledge and information so that we have this stuff prepared. It's just that where it exists and when it's going to come up is going to be up to us based on when it feels right to introduce those things.
But hopefully if we have our characters and we have our locations and we have our factions all fleshed out really well, the plot will, instead of us forcing a plot, the plot will reveal itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best answer for it. Because again, we don't want to get too far into the details of what we're working on. We really want it to be a surprise for a lot of you because again, it's just like we're so excited about it. And I think it's going to just have so much more of an impact if we're able to reveal that as we tell the story. But yeah. Really there was a few questions here that I really wanted to get into some details because I thought they were really great. Let me just I had them noted in a separate document. So I think I addressed some of the things in the last episode as far as like the time travel, like story arc and all those, like, how much was planned in advance. I'm pretty sure I addressed all of that last time we spoke. I'm pretty, like as far as like what plans I had, what was already planned out ahead of time and what was just improvised. And, I mean, most of that was improvised. But let's see. Oh, there was two other NPCs that never really addressed, and there was Tabi and 31 Squared.
Oh, I was going to bring up Tabi.
I'm pretty sure 31 Squared was either reintegrated or something. I think that, Zero probably had plans for 31 Squared because remember, like he was still sort of air gapped or I don't know. Or there's also
I feel like 31 Squared didn't, like he kind of tangentially came up at the end, but never really directly.
He never came back. Right.
Yeah.
And as far as Tabi, it's like, I think if anything, I wish I had more time to develop Tabi, or just more opportunities, but I never really, as the person who tends to run this show, like I'm not typically playing interns most of the time, right? I'm the one usually running an intern episode because like Dave's not here or someone else is not here. And usually Dave is DMing at that time. Right. So like for Tabi, I only had a few opportunities to kind of explore him, but I just kind of, as far as an intern, it felt right for me to bring him back because that was sort of my first ever NPC in this campaign. But I'd like to imagine he's like hopping planes and or just trying to find his place, in this new universe because like, he was a young kid and he was probably resourceful enough to figure out how the fuck to get out of that situation. So, I'd like to think that he's out there somewhere still, and maybe start looking for his long lost friends and seeing if any of them are still around. So I loved this question. I'll tell you, asked this one. It's like, would the cast reunite for one episode to do a roast of Dave and Fran, a sort of turning the tables, but the roast is centered around moments from the campaign?
Yes.
Has it like every episode not been roasted?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. It's like, I'm pretty sure that every time we just do like a talking episode,
but not a planned one.
It's just inadvertently like a roast of us, especially me. And so, but I mean, like, maybe I feel like if everyone was able to prepare enough jokes or material to do it, yeah, why not? I could see us doing a roast of some kind. I think it's a popular, fun comedy format. I enjoy a good roast personally. So
I
yeah,
like a good
mean,
pot
maybe.
roast.
I'll say a confident
honestly
maybe.
Don't like roasts. I think they're stupid.
I think if they're done right.
Except for look up Norm Macdonald's addition to the roast of Bob Saget. That's the only clip of a roast worthwhile.
I want to say Gilbert Gottfried's telling of the Aristocrats joke was at one of those roasts too, and that was an all-time classic telling. But yeah, for the most part, roasts require much stronger comedians than you usually get at roasts.
Okay, there's another question here. It's more for the DMs, but is how hard is it to make engaging combat when you get to higher levels? Tenlisol asked this, and with a party that can be chaotic and knows what they're doing and how to play. And yeah, my answer with that, like Dave just kind of whispered there, right, was like, it was a learning experience for both of us the entire time because like. On paper, what looks strong, and obviously, like we all know the joke and the thing about the whole forgetting about legendary resistance with the dragons and all the stuff, right? But outside of that, it was more just like not only did these guys and gals and and goobers know what they were doing, but the things that they would do during these encounters would often be unexpected or something that you can't prepare for because like everyone's got their own approaches to things. And so for me it was never about like, oh man, I really want to beat these guys down, right? Because again, as the DM, you're the one who's like, you want the party to succeed. You just don't want it to necessarily be a breeze all the time, right? You want to be able to pose or prevent, or create a challenge. And so, if anything, it was more of a good exercise for Dave and I to be like, okay, what the fuck is actually going to challenge y'all? Because I don't think personally D&D 5th edition was designed to be played at length at higher levels. It's why most of the fab campaigns end at level 15, right? I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 actual published like Wizards of the Coast Forgotten Realms campaigns that actually take you all the way at 20.
Mm-hmm.
The fucking moving parts for a combat at level 20 are ridiculous.
Yeah,
like,
even just the players, right? I mean, you guys were all like, "Oh my god, there's just so much on my sheet that like I keep forgetting about, or so many features, or so many things." It's just a lot to keep track of.
Well, online, right? Like I had like probably a good 10 or 12
like tabs
open just so that I could easily reference
the different that's been the benefit of doing this remotely or doing it like virtually, like through like Discord and stuff like that, is because like I'm able to like pull up so much information on my second monitor that it would be much harder to access. I had to be printing out so many more sheets if I were doing this like in
character
real life.
sheet is great, but like I can't write everything down on one piece of paper.
No. Right. You need some sort of digital record or just some other way to track it. Like you used to make index cards, I remember, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for some of your like commonly used spells and abilities.
Like,
and I mean, it's really just about like figuring out how to manage that for yourself. Whether you're a DM or a player, it's just like, how do you manage and keep track of all the things that you can do? And that's always been the hardest thing for us. But again, because of that improv format we have, we want to do a lot of reacting to things, but it's like, we still want to be playing this game while we're doing it. It's just, it's been a very interesting creative challenge to be able to approach those things and find what's going to be challenging and entertaining. Because I think combat is one of the hardest things to make really engaging to listen to. Now, some people love the dice rolls and the damage and the numbers and the rules. Like that's like so that's there's some people who just like love that shit. So like,
did anybody see the D&D movie that just came out?
No, Nicole and I are gonna go see it this weekend. So
I'm not going to spoil anything by saying this, but I don't think I'm going to spoil anything by saying this, but it very much applies to what we're talking about. There's this one specific part of a combat scene in the movie where you can see that there's like kind of like turn-based hits and like spells and cantrips and things going on, but that piece like just takes maybe like 3 seconds to pass. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, wow, that would be like 20 minutes of actual play.
Exactly though, right? Because I feel like we don't have the visual element here either. except for between each other, but like, we have to make sure that like y'all know what's happening. Like when you're listening to this, we want to make sure that if it's the best of our ability, right, that we can help explain to you and highlight for you the things that are happening. And I think over time, I remember like literally putting a note on my monitor for a while being like, hey, describe how that action takes place. Like elaborate, stupid, just like things like that, just to kind of remind myself like, hey, okay, cool, you hit this creature, so it recoils from the hit. Just like a quick comment just to kind of add that extra dynamic of, and we're only going to get better with that as we continue to do this stuff, right? So I want to make sure that we're continuing to add that kind of flavor into fights, so that we're still providing an entertaining product to listen to, right? Because that's really the main medium that we operate on here is theater of the mind.
Yeah, theater of the mind is one of the things that has forced us to be descriptive and has probably helped us along in developing more than almost anything else we've done. Not having a sheet has forced, like not having a map on the table forces me as a DM to be very descriptive and to ask my players to be descriptive of positions, for example.
Let's see, other questions. Another NPC we didn't address was Mr. Black, but I think that we're going to leave that ambiguous for right now because again, he's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the last of Mr. Black.
I just think, but if anything, his duty is
established immortal. So
yeah. So is Hondo. Hondo's out there somewhere being immortal.
Yeah.
So maybe there might be some cameos, like there might be some Easter eggs the next season where we reference back to this one, because how could we not, right? So I just say we there may or may not be plans for these folks at some point. We got some more personal questions and things like that. So before I even get to what the content of those are, I guess I just want to say as a general statement, because I get DMs about this stuff a lot too, or like emails personally, like or to our account that ask more about like ourselves as people, as like like the players behind the characters, right? And so I don't want to disappoint anybody, but like what I will say is that I think all of us are, for the most part, rather private individuals. We're all pretty disillusioned with social media. We're not very active on these things. We don't really have like I mean, doing a podcast like this, you're already opening yourself up to the internet more than your average person. So, and there's that parasocial relationship, right, that gets created with some of your audience members, right? Because like, there are times where we are vulnerable and like have some, some self-disclosure and things where we talk about things that are happening in our personal lives. And, that's like what we feel comfortable sharing at the time. But I can understand why these things happen, because like I mean I've definitely felt like some sort of like at least personal or something. I've been able to relate to other content creators and things like that in the past as well, and just kind of feel that personal connection of like, oh yeah, wow, this person's been through a lot of the same kind of stuff I have, or and things like that. But what I do want to say is that I mean, we can go into these questions, but like if I ask any of them, we could just either we're just not going to hear them because they'll be cut, or only answer what you feel comfortable like answering, right? I'm just saying that to the group here because like I, for example, like I if for a little self-disclosure that doesn't give away much at all really, is like I work in I've had experience in the past, even just through my career, my education, of like cybersecurity. And I'm very, very selective about what information I share to the public and to the internet, because like those things could be potential security questions, and there's a lot of creeps and crazies out there in the World Wide Web, and I just like I don't want to give anyone any sort of ammunition to be used I guess against any of us in any sort of way. So that's really a big reason I think why we keep a lot of these things to ourselves. I'm not sure.
And if my parents are listening to this one, I just want to reiterate: never click on a link that is texted to you by an unknown number, please. If you don't know who the number is, and they're
don't click the link. Same with email.
And they say this is your bank, it's not your bank, and they send you a link. Don't click on that link, please. This has been a PSA.
But so like, as we ask some questions about just like, like what we do for a living, or like, what we've been up to in the past 6.5 years, like if we have any like major personal accomplishments like we want to share with folks. So I'm not sure if anyone wants to like, like if we want to like, if there's any plugs or anything we want to do, but like, again, I'm going to leave it up to everybody here if we want to answer that at all. Cause I want to make sure we at least address like the personal questions that we get sometimes.
What are we addressing right now? What did you just ask?
I said, I mean, two of the questions I saw were like, what do you do for a living? You don't have to answer this. It's just, someone was curious. Or, what have we been up to in the past like 6.5 years? Like, do we have any sort of personal, like, or major accomplishments we'd like to tell the world, right? Like, I know he's like, this person mentioned, like, I know James had a kid in the middle somewhere. I mean, he's got 2 beautiful children and he's doing well and, doing his thing over there with his amazing kids, right? He's like, I classify that as a good accomplishment. I don't have any children, right? But I don't know. I mean, is that something we want to even answer here? Is this something worth like exploring, or anyone that anyone wants to talk to?
I mean, I would go as far
pregnant.
I would say, I work in I'm a specialized technician working on obscure and outdated equipment. What have I done in the last 6.5 years? I met, dated, and married a wonderful woman, and we're coming up on our 5th anniversary this fall. So I don't know. A lot of shit happened.
And again, a lot of that's pretty personal, but this show has sort of been that constant in our lives of just like, this good time we get to have every week with each other. It's pretty cool.
I'll chime in. I mean,
yeah,
I went
ahead,
from being a bartender waiter when we first started to an assistant principal this year. So, I mean, my story arc in my real life has been quite a travel, quite a journey.
Ups and downs and all that stuff. Yeah,
a lot of ups and lots of downs.
You've likened it to a soap opera at times.
I did, as the Gentile turns, if you will. But yeah, I mean, it's been so cool to kind of be a part of something that has also seen me through kind of my own journey and my own trek in real life. And has stayed with me as a piece to that puzzle, right? So this is another accomplishment in my life. I
remember you were because you were still in school when we started this podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, right. So I graduated. So I got a second bachelor's degree in education. I got my master's degree in education. I've been now an educator for almost 6 years now. In addition to moving up as an assistant principal this year. So I mean, if anything about leveling up is in real life, I mean, I've leveled up.
Nice. Yeah. That's
which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten back into like music things. Like, I think I've mentioned a few times in passing, right? Like, what I do for my career is what I do for my career, but like, my passion projects are really where like, I'm able to kind of flex myself, right? So like that's through like music that I've created in the past and the stuff that I'm doing now with the band that I'm in. And this podcast is a big part of my life for the last 6.5 years. I mean, I would say this is probably my proudest accomplishment of the last 6.5 years, of just like making this happen and telling this story and finally, reaching the conclusion of that and, starting up our new endeavor. I just think it's really cool. I mean, I'm not trying to use this as like an opportunity to plug my own like projects and things like that. I mean, I guess if anyone's curious, I could probably elaborate that on our Discord or whatever. But like, I'm not trying to use this as a, sort of the spotlight for that. Because again, there's just more passion projects of myself. I mean, I know John's in a band. We can cut this if we want, but I mean, do we want to plug you want to plug your band, John? You guys are pretty fantastic.
Plug your band, Fran, plug your shit. You never finished plugging your stuff.
I guess
everybody here is socially awkward, so this is us not plugging Fran's band Silo, CYLO, and John's band Strange Standard. You can definitely check them both out on the internet. Silo pretty much just on Instagram at this point.
Yeah,
they are recording a record soon.
Yeah, we created like our socials recently because these are guys I've been making music with since we were in high school, but like we only recently started like actually like performing and doing stuff out. Like we played at a music festival last year. We played some shows in the last like few months, and we're working on a record. It's gonna be fun. It's like if you like weird ambient, experimental post rock jazz, you're gonna love us. If you like funk, you're gonna like John's band.
I know way too fucking many musicians.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we can talk. Like I said, we can talk more about it on Discord and stuff. That we can like maybe post some links or whatever if you guys really want to like hear that stuff. And then I used to produce like beats and stuff like that under the moniker Groove Serial, which I recently had some acknowledgments of recently that we randomly tuned in. Like someone gave me a notification via Bandcamp when they bought one of my old records that I made like 12 years ago. Someone was playing it on the radio in like New York, New Jersey last weekend when I was at Nicole's house. Like I broke down into tears because they're like, "Oh, it's like one of my favorite producers, Groove Serial." It's like, I don't even know you. You're amazing. I love you so much.
They also played like your whole album, didn't they?
like half of my first record. Yeah. Which again, I wrote those songs 12 years ago, so it's just cool. Like it was just randomly happened upon someone like playing these things that I wrote so long ago. It's just, it was a cool experience.
And then John, Strange Standards on Spotify, if I remember correctly, right?
Mm-hmm. We listened to your record. I listened to your record on Spotify on my way up, taking Nicole back to her house recently, actually. Nice. So
your actual record is sitting on my TV stand.
Yeah, we finished a whole vinyl since this show has started. We almost got a second one done. So yeah.
Check them out, seriously.
I feel like my career path has just been like a Pokemon evolution over the last couple of years in 3 stages. Just got to, this is essentially the same job, but it's gotten better. Working in human services, which I'm sure many of you may have caught. I don't know how many of our listeners are from New York or have worked in the human service field, but James and I, and even Dave, would use the lingo sometimes.
Yeah, like during the recordings of the show. Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's probably come up on a few occasions. I did my best to cut any sort of personal identifiable information out of there because, HIPAA and all that stuff, right? But
not that kind of stuff. But like, I think in one of the episodes we were referenced using Skip to get out of a bar.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's in human services, it's a safe, protection against aggression kind of thing. For those of you who aren't from New York and trained in Skip, the only people who would really know what that is.
That went right over my head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm familiar with it just because I know you guys and I've heard y'all talk about it enough. But yeah, it's interesting. So I feel like that answered, I think, most of that. But I guess there was another question about if there's any others we want to hit here. I mean, if we've all been looking through this, were there any others we wanted to hit before we get to the end of this?
Okay. The last question that came up about the 90s cartoon bad guy version of themselves.
Oh yeah.
Like what they would be like. I don't even have an answer for myself, but it came to me that Jor-El would be Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove as a bad guy because he's still just like he wouldn't be able to be bad.
I don't feel like he's a bad guy though.
He's the underling of the evil villain.
Yeah, like once you get past the first Emperor's New Groove or whatever, like he's just a total good guy after that. Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, Felix kind of became the cartoon bad guy version of himself when Larlock took over, right? So we kind of saw that play out. I feel like Zero would just be a cartoonish, some sort of mad scientist robot type thing, right?
I just got a mental image of Pregnart coming from like the Star Trek mirror universe, that just has a dark black goatee. He still does very similarly
the glued
stupid
on
things.
felt goatee that they used.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dark black moss, but it's still fake, and it's glued on. Yeah. And yeah, he's lawful good. I'm switching that axis instead of being chaotic evil.
That's I'd like to think of Quinn as sort of like your swashbuckling pirate, like your proper swashbuckling pirate, but he's like an actual pirate.
Like Captain Hook.
Yeah, I was thinking Captain Hook, but I don't know. Like I feel like Jack Sparrow, even though he's not a villain, like I feel like he's more.
Okay, this is the '90s cartoon bad guy version of the
that's
character.
True. Yeah. I guess Captain Hook. I was trying to get away from Captain Hook. I mean, that is the obvious answer.
I mean, Captain Hook was like Peter Pan, the 1950s movie.
If it's theatrics, the actual Blackbeard of history was all about theatrics.
That's true. Yeah,
it's true.
What was his deal? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I mean, what was it? Something he tied some burning, it wasn't fireworks or something, but it was like flares or something. He literally tied into his beard and had them flaming when he was boarding ships. But I mean, piracy was all about, how much work can your reputation do for you in advance?
Was his beard black because of soot? Because
I have a good one.
Probably it was
rockets
black, but it didn't have. it didn't have to be.
What about Sideshow Bob?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think Quinn is Sideshow Bob.
Yeah,
because he thinks he doesn't get enough credit for the things he does, even though he's not really the main guy, and he loves the theatrics. I think it's Sideshow Bob.
I love that.
I was going to give Gaston, but you made a good argument there.
Ooh, Gaston's a good one too.
Wait, I misunderstood the question. All right, let me think about this for
a 90s cartoon.
I almost like Scar too, but
we can almost turn this into like a between two episodes at this point with the amount of ideas that we could have for this, but
I'm gonna say Pregnart's it's not 90s. I think this is 70s, 80s, but Muttley is Dick Dastardly's sidekick on Wacky Racers.
Wow, what a callback.
That would be Pregnart's evil counterpart.
Yeah, I can see that. I could see that. That's
is that his laugh?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Does Dexter's sister Dee Dee from Dexter's Lab count as an evil? Okay, that's Boris then. There we go.
All right. Yeah, all right.
She's chaotic neutral, but through
I really don't.
She's chaotic neutral, but through Dexter's lens, I think she is evil.
Yeah. What about Angelica from Rugrats?
I also considered that
evil.
Yeah, that's kind of an evil Boris a bit.
Who do we not address? Who would the Hoblet version? What would the Hoblet cartoon villain?
I feel like the opposite of Hoblet is like happy and clean and friendly,
but also evil. So
what are their names? Pain and Panic from Hercules.
I was gonna say, who was that like Bond villain parody from The Simpsons? Like Scorpio guy?
Scorpio.
Yeah, that I think
is Hoblet.
Hoblet, yeah.
Okay.
Lawful evil all the way.
That's fun. I like that.
And Paradil, I don't know about Paradil. I always tried to play as true neutral.
Yeah.
So, what would be an evil version of a true neutral?
Him with an evil mustache.
Yeah.
Ooh. What about Boris from
like Boris and Natasha?
From
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Moose and Squirrel. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Wario.
He's got a fedora instead of a sweet headband, though. I guess. Yeah.
That's great.
That tracks.
I feel like we actually got a lot. We got to a lot of these questions.
Let's take a look. Let me take a look.
Okay. But there was one way I forgot that I mentioned that we were going to address this, and then we didn't come back to it. But there was, what were some of your favorite puns, jokes, and catchphrases from the show throughout its history?
I don't remember a fucking thing. I don't remember a damn thing.
Literally an entire episode of wood puns that
I do remember that.
That was the first thing that came to mind for me.
Were a lot of fun.
That was the first one that came to mind for me was wood puns. It was the 35 minutes of just wood puns.
I pine for another wood pun.
God damn it.
The Quintatorship.
All aboard on the wood pun train.
Oh yeah, because that was the pun, right? The name of the episode, but like it really was that. And I remember, like, I think it's pinned in our episode talk channel. I actually have I had clipped something from our one of our pregame conversations where Mike was like, "Yo, I listened back to the Quintatorship and like you guys are right. Like I was kind of an asshole," and I was like, "Oh, he said it."
There was some cognition there. Yeah.
I don't know what kind of stress was going on in your life at that time, Mike, but it translated to the air in a most fabulous way.
That was a wild episode. A moment of it.
It was a wild episode.
One last quick question, because I did like this one. If for anyone who wants to answer this, favorite adult beverage? ? I've been known to, have the old beer or two as we record these episodes. I do enjoy a nice refreshing beer, a lager, an IPA, a pilsner, those types of things. But I don't drink a lot. I mean, it's I don't really do a lot of that kind of stuff these days.
I have not. The only drug I've done in the past year and a half is caffeine. Now I quit cold turkey. Anything besides that. I only drank a little before that. I smoked weed a little bit before that.
Mm-hmm. But we can say that now. It's legal. Yes. I do occasionally partake in the devil's lettuce, I guess.
I don't care.
Yeah. Devil's lettuce.
For me, big Belgians. Doubles, triples, quadruples.
What's Belgians?
Belgian beers.
Like beers. Yes. Yeah. Delicious.
I always liked like a nice tequila neat. I always just loved sipping on just like a nice, real smoky reposado.
It's like one of the only liquors I could still drink these days because I partied too much in my younger years, and now most liquor just makes me sick.
Rather.
For me,
coffee. I think coffee is an adult beverage, and I like coffee.
Yeah, I love coffee. I'm a huge snob for coffee.
Coffee is definitely a go-to. I have to have one every morning and usually one every afternoon. For me, it's gin and tonics. I've gotten very old. And so my drinking has kind of mutated into old people drinks. But gin and tonic is definitely a go-to for me. And I've become snobby, and it has to be Tanqueray. And then for Quinn, I think Quinn is a Cosmo, like a nice, classy, crisp Cosmo.
Yeah, we should also say, everybody, if you're going to drink, please drink responsibly. Don't be an idiot.
Don't be an idiot.
I guess we should talk about our characters too, right?
I guess so. Why not? I don't know. I feel like Felix would have something that's like really pretentious because he just acts that way a lot. So like some sort of like cocktail that has no less than like 5 or 6 ingredients.
I think we would all drink pretentiously. All of our characters.
Probably.
No, Boris would like cheap beer.
Peridot would drink just like a moderately priced whiskey and smoke some weed as well.
Probably. Yeah, that makes sense.
He's chill.
What about John or Jarrell?
John just likes beer, but yeah, Jarrell is definitely a wine kind of guy.
Real life Nicole. Sorry, go ahead.
Not a fan of wine, personally.
I'm Italian, so I'm obligated to like wine.
Real life Nicole can't tolerate alcohol, but lives in Ontario, so her favorite adult beverage is something called Bubble Kush, which is a root beer.
That sounds
you can only get from the marijuana stores. It's great. It's delicious. And also espresso.
Does Pregnart drink? Does Pregnart smoke? I can't imagine that he would need to be altered in any sense.
No, I'm pretty sure he is perfect exactly the way he is.
But he does cook, and he cooks a lot of like soups and stews, so he probably drinks red wine sometimes, like straight out of the bottle. No. Like he's poured some into the pot and then like glugs out of the bottle and sticks it on the counter.
Here's what Pregnart does. Pregnart probably has some sort of psilocybin source that he cultures himself. And he probably on his birthday
just having a magical time.
He just has an extra magical time. Yeah.
It's his own slime. He's been licking it the whole time and just tripping since he joined the campaign.
No one ever did intentionally ingest Pregnart's slime. Although at one point we did have 2 types of acid in this show, and we definitely alluded to what the other type was. It was not the corrosive kind.
I'm going to say Pregnart has an old roast beef sandwich that he uses as a substrate for his magic mushrooms in the back of the fridge.
Well, I mean, in a universe where magic is real, I'd imagine that would be a real fucking trippy experience, like legitimately.
Yeah, are there... what are the spells that can... are like basically drug euphemisms, drug allegories?
We always
what
used
are the
to.
Spells like that? Confusion.
Dave and I have always joked about how, if you were to partake in smoking one of those left-handed cigarettes, as the kids call them, you were essentially
the kids do that.
Smoking a scroll. It was a scroll of calm emotions.
Yeah.
Right, because the spell calm emotion. Yeah. That was actually a joke that we had from our last campaign that was prior to this podcast, and we just kind of carried it over to this one because we just thought it was really funny.
I think if you cast confusion on somebody, I think that's just giving them cocaine.
I feel like we shouldn't talk too much about drugs. I feel like there's some sort of content guidelines for these things, so I don't want to go like.
I don't think so.
Too much into that. We can joke about it. We're just joking. We're just joking about it. You know what I mean? Like we would never condone like doing like crazy drugs and shit like that.
I'm not saying anything.
Take care of your bodies, people.
Hey, everybody, do cocaine. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying hey, everybody, go get some crystal meth and smoke it.
I hear it's real good for you.
And
I would never
you'll be
say
casting haste on yourself, or at least you'll feel like you've cast haste on yourself.
Yeah, I feel like haste is more of the cocaine analog to anything else because there's also a crash that's associated with it, right? So,
Time stop right, would be a heavy indica.
Oh God, that's not even one of the questions. We just made up our own now at this point.
It stemmed from the main question.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at here to see if there's any more cast centric questions. Okay, you know what? This is actually a good one. Since we do have a little time here because we're just riffing. There was a question that was posed to the whole cast, and while this is kind of worded a little weird, I kind of understand why. So I'll try to do my best to translate this. But if you were your character in a scenario that you really enjoyed another character going through as their character, like what would you have done differently? So like think about all of the different wacky moments that we've had, like that certain characters have had where they've had the spotlight. What would you have done in their shoes, right? If it was your character in that position. I like to think like example like Hoblet on being told to stay on the ladder, or if it was, like someone else driving the van, or I mean, I'm using random examples here, but like, you know what I mean? Like, are there any that come to mind immediately for you of like where your character, if you were playing your character in that situation, you're like, oh man, I wish I was able to do this.
Quinn would have done everything differently for everyone, and that's what he wrote about in his stories. So that's Quinn's answer.
Like here, I'll give you a good example, right? If Felix at any point in time had been handed any sort of document that had information, I probably would have shared it with the party well before Quinn ever would have considered doing that.
Would Felix have, though?
Yes.
Knowing what we know now, would he have?
Yes. I also would not have thrown a fucking note into the fire like Hoblet did so many moons ago. It's why I stopped giving him the papers. He did
not like the written word.
He did not like the written word. No, he did not.
I want to answer this question with, I wish that we could have seen Melvin Illuminumion in the Wizarding School of Ool.
Oh man, we barely
the magic school of Ool.
Zach, that's actually that's a good point, because we didn't even talk about our full play characters or anything like that, and like those were some of the wackier and like sillier things that we've ever done, like especially with like an actual story like juxtaposed against it. Yeah, man, Melvin was special. I would like to imagine
Melvin, and I would love to see him like
a reprisal
up the roles of the magic school, because that would be his like entire scene, and he would be so good at playing into it.
Can we just get a quick Melvin voice if you got it in you right now?
What is he? Hi, hey, this is Melvin. Hey.
Yeah, you still got it.
Mage Hand. He would cast Mage Hand. I think this is where Melvin was. Was he as gaspy?
Yeah, kind of. Gaspy and lilting, right? Because his voice would crack a lot. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm Melvin.
That's it.
Melvin. Yeah, I think he was higher. Melvin Illuminumion. I think he was a little emo Phillips.
Yeah. Yes, that's the one. I feel like Melvin also was responsible for probably one of the best callbacks to a joke from the campaign ever, because like Joe did the.
Oh yeah, let me say his line. Looking for a gift for a friend.
That's the one. That was another one of the greatest like unscripted moments of this. I mean, none of them were scripted, right? But it's like, you know what I mean? Like just one of those like just very natural, like, I mean, didn't miss a fucking beat, like moments of the show. Was that?
I hated the episodes where Fran would just show up and he's like, "Here's the lines, everybody. Here's the script. Read your part and shut up afterwards."
That's right, everybody. This entire thing has been scripted this whole time. We were never playing this game. The dice were just a distraction. No. Seriously though, that was great. I guess, just the full play thing was pretty awesome. And I'm glad that we were like, that Dave was able to essentially tie that into like the big event, right? Of the reveal of the, like, during the inauguration, with the whole Vecna shit. Cause that was really when like we started blowing this campaign wide open. That was a lot of fun. to play through.
Beating that in the full play special, beating that bomb puzzle. Actually, while the timer was coming down,
that was the most dramatic. That was the thing.
Yeah,
that was
completely unscripted. Actually happened like that, and that
also let me just say R.I.P. Mrs. Piazza. That was the old lady that died from a heart attack when I wild shaped into a dog or a wolf or whatever. Yeah, yeah. When she saw me do that,
didn't we accidentally kill a little dog too?
No, no, I don't think we did.
In like the suburb scene of that?
Yeah, no, that was Mrs. Piazza that died. That was Mrs. Piazza. You punted the dog. The dog was like, you mage-handed the dog or something. Yeah, you're right. Something happened to her dog. I think
Melvin got confused as to what
something
the dog
happened
was.
to her dog. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Sorry, dog.
Sorry, Mrs. Piazza.
That was awful. I remember that
now. Yeah, that's another great moment. I mean, like, it's like, and I think that's something I have to kind of say is that because, again, this campaign took place over the course of 6.5 years, there's just so many moments that I wouldn't say forgotten, but like, unless I'm reminded of them, like, I kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't come to mind immediately, but like, every now and again, like someone will say something in the Discord or whatever, or like, like remind me of something that happened a long time ago. And I'm just like, oh, right. Like, like, it just feels like it was like a lifetime ago of like when some of these moments happened.
What was Spike's horse's name? Daffodil?
I don't remember.
Spike.
But I will say
Spike was my Australian.
I will say that for Spike. But your intro for him, like I still remember the thing that you said was like my bite and bark are equally bad, and like I just that one stuck with me for some reason because it was just like it was so stupid.
Spike.
Yeah, that's actually where Mike was able to do a reprisal and a reimagining of his character from our OG campaign, Rovin Tossbottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fun. That's really funny. Shit. I mean,
that was
even
one of the better character names during.
Oh my god, yeah, that was one of the greatest names ever for a character.
What, Rovin Tossbottom?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honored. Thank you.
It was just upper echelons of silly.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
and he didn't take no gruff, so.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. James always had such like weird characters for those things too. Like what was it, Sven Svensson and
Sven Svensson.
Yeah, like. I remember when Massimo played. What was his name? What was the barbarian's name?
I was trying to. Not the barbarian.
Flareon. Flareon the barbarian. When Melvin was flavoring the door handles of the quote unquote cars that were in the parking lot of that park, and then at one point his character just rips off one of those door handles and he's just sitting there chewing on it the whole time, just like like it's a fucking lollipop. That was like the imagery that we created there. I was like, I guarantee no one has done this before in a D&D campaign. We are pioneering this.
So
right
before
now.
Paradil, I had never played D&D, and then Paradil, I just wanted to play a straight ahead fighter because I was intimidated by the magic element.
Yeah.
What was it? Prestidigitation is what Melvin had, and I had never played a magical character before Melvin, and I was just reading the thing. I got just so excited that prestidigitation allowed you to change the taste of things.
The taste of things, yeah. It's just such an interesting little, like one of those little things that just you could do so much. You can add so much literal flavor to your campaign with that.
Loved it. Went wild. Thank you.
And actually, there's another NPC or another character even that we didn't necessarily talk too much about that I feel like I'd be remiss if we forgot to mention, and that was Frankie Wilde.
I had him on my list, but I didn't bring him up.
Dave, I remember when you first introduced the concept of the man that is Frankie Wilde, because like I feel like that's a character that's very much outside of like your comfort zone as far as like who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not really flashy at all, and that's literally all he is substance, or style, and no substance.
But you were able to portray like the washed up rock star, right? That still thinks he's hot shit, but like is just an absolute train wreck. That was such a great character concept and idea. I love Frankie Wilde. It was a joy to DM for Frankie Wilde.
He was like a David Lee Roth at his worst.
That's exactly where I was going with
at his best.
Yes.
Like the worst traits of David Lee Roth and Dr. Roxo, the rock and roll clown. And
but I felt like you also portrayed him as like thinking he was like as good as Freddie Mercury at his best.
Oh yeah. Because if you're gonna be a rock star, you have to. Because if there's any doubt in your mind, it'll show.
So that's the thing. I had a character concept for a bard that was was supposed to be a cross between Freddie Mercury and Phil Collins, where he like wore like this drum set around himself and was gonna but we already had too many bards and Frankie Wilde existed, and I was like, there was no way that I'm going to be able to top Frankie Wilde. And then obviously we had Hedrick, in the mix as well. I was like, this character concept is great, but I need to save it for another time. Or if anyone else wants to roleplay that or steal that idea, you're fucking feel free. I just I had this whole idea. He'd have this sort of essentially like collapsible drum set that he could wear. And so like whenever we were in an encounter, he would like pull the whole thing out and just be doing drum solos and drum. Cause I'm a drummer, right, in real life. So I'd be able to, it was sort of like an analog to those things. And, but yeah, I just never really got to explore that concept because Frankie Wilde was just too good at being that kind of that kind of bard.
I just feel like we could have done a Battle of the Bards Part 2, and it would have been
all of them. That would have been cool. They just never came up like when we were planning all this stuff out, right? But that's a great idea. That was a great idea. Maybe we could do that as like a one shot, if we do like a series of like what ifs at some point, right? And just do like a reprisal of some characters of like playing out a scenario that maybe could have been but never did.
To touch back on the interns, I just want to thank everyone here for giving Spanx Mahoney truly the death that he deserved.
Oh my God. Can we just talk about that? I know, okay, again, this episode is getting close to like 2 hours long at this point.
That's fine.
Whatever. Yeah.
People are hanging in there.
Yeah, people are hanging in there. We hope, you're still enjoying this shit. But so like, can we just talk about that brief like break to that alternate timeline? Because that was an idea that we had like very quickly. Right. That was just one of those things where it's like, okay, we need to condense this whole thing into one episode.
That was kind of like a crisis episode. We were like, well, we don't know what to do. And we were like, all right, let's just improvise everything
Let's
tonight.
fucking improvise, right? Because like I remember Dave was not able to join us, but we still wanted to we're like, fuck it. Like, let's just still get together and let's figure out if there's some sort of content we can farm here. And we're like, well, you know what? Like we do have 2 extra characters that we could fuck with, and that's Dudu and Pregnar. So, and I guess this is like also letting you into our episode design process, or where we collaborate on these, where we have to just improvise something on the fly. I was like, okay, you know what? Like, let's just what if we took these 2 bumbling idiots, right, and just shoved them into an alternate, because we've been playing with all these crazy timelines, and because like this whole area is sort of this amalgamation of all these different places, like let's just throw them into a future or into a present where Vecna decided not to steal Tarantus because it was just, I'm done. I can't deal with this crap. And it's because Spanx Mahoney has somehow found a way to become the supreme big boy or whatever. Like that's what you had pitched, Zach. I remember where it's like this fucked up present where Spanx is the leader of everything. And I was like, well, okay, if we're going to do this, then like everyone else should play bizarro versions of themselves, right? That was the whole goal, was that like everyone is going to be playing. So like, how like Altair asked the question about like the 90s cartoon villains of our characters. This was sort of just whatever y'all thought was the opposite of what your character was. And I remember having all of you
in a world that would allow Spanx Mahoney to rise to such power and fame. What would that allow for the rest of us?
For the rest of us, right? So like we essentially got together, we talked for about like 30 minutes about kind of like how we were going to try to play something out, or if there were any sort of scenes we wanted to create in particular. Like I remember we wanted to have like this sort of like band rehearsal scene where Quinn was a backup musician, right? Where he was someone in the background, right? He was someone who didn't want the spotlight, like didn't want to be involved, like just kind of wanted to be like on his own, right? The very opposite of Quinn. right? Boris was gonna just sort of be this like, just this like little this like dame or like like a little princess,
like a helpless
or
princess.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like just like like the daughter of like
no,
nobility.
A scary beast.
Right, exactly. Jarrell, I forgot like what notes we had, like because you were playing to do, so we didn't really necessarily have you doing much. But like, those are just sort of the things we wanted to touch on. Was just making sure that there were like opposite versions of characters.
As a side note to that episode, I just want to say that is excellent proof that whatever we may exaggerate on air between Fran and I as like antagonists, Fran definitely entrusted in me a lot of like responsibility to just like stay in character and at least keep the thing on the rails a little bit.
Just help us, like just help me keep this moving because we want I want to resolve this in one episode.
Or not to keep it moving necessarily, but like to
just
still let me voice and improvise the actions and dialogue for the character that was the main antagonist in an episode where I'm also playing one of the main two-hander protagonists.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was all silliness from top to bottom. Like I remember, like looking back, like I remember like when we first ended it, I was like, man, was that just an absolute fever dream? Is that going to fucking make sense at all? And then like the next day when I was editing it, I was like, you know what? No, this is actually pretty ridiculous and stupid and in like a good way.
It's very silly.
Yeah.
You've also got to shout out that one character from Massimo. What was it? The PTSD.
Oh my god!
Wait, who is this again?
I forgot. Glenn Chubbs Gold Dust. That was. So
wow. I'm gonna hold. Had some gold, man.
I need to hold for a second here because I want to ask you guys. I actually that was actually the first quote unquote hate mail we ever got was for that because of that character, but I don't know if I want to address that on here.
Yeah, let's do it.
What was it?
Okay.
I don't know because I don't have anything nice to say about the guy who wrote it.
Well, I'm not going to call anyone out. Like that's not.
I don't think he's a listener anyway.
Anyways, so
you can always edit this out if you want to, Fran.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But let's talk about it. So Chubbs was actually his character, right? Because it's a caricature, right? Like everything we do is comedy. It's parody. Like we're not ever coming after anyone for any reason, right? Like we're not trying to disparage anybody. That's never our
the Trump supporters. Crump
supporters. Lord Crump.
There was some
I would like to openly disparage Trump supporters.
I mean,
make
but
no bones about that.
With the present climate of all of that, I don't think we were wrong in what we were doing.
Yeah, it's just like we just try to not necessarily like make things like we don't want to get into that kind of shit in this fantastical environment. Like the whole point of like this playing D&D is to have an escape from some of these things. But we had our fun, right? We had our fun with some of these topics. But so like Massimo was like playing essentially a caricature of like this grizzled war veteran. And I remember getting actually like I'm not going to necessarily consider it hate mail, but just like an unhappy email from somebody who didn't like the way that we portrayed a war veterans as they were a veteran themselves. And I guess I responded in a very kind way because it's like we're not here to make fun of anybody. Everything we do is through the lens of comedy and through caricatures because this is fantastical. Like this is a whole world where we're making up a whole lot of shit. Like we're not coming after anyone.
I'm gonna make a wild guess. You got that through Facebook, I'm guessing.
No, through our email.
Damn it. All right, fine.
But like I guess
that was Massimo in full chaos mode.
It was just chaos, right? It was just coming up with like an exaggerated character.
Nobody would confuse it for an actual war veteran because I mean, my headcanon is that the Chubbs was making it up the whole fucking time because it was so absolutely outlandish.
Like I mean, outrageous. Like this dude was insane. Exactly right. Like it's just like you have to kind of like suspend your disbelief here and like remember that we're just playing make believe.
Right. There are veterans who have serious mental health issues associated.
Yeah, and we are not making light of that. We're not making light of that, right?
And there's
also any mental health issues.
Right. That's not like the root point of it.
No,
it's just to be outlandish,
as someone who,
possible.
yeah, as someone personally who is like a huge advocate for like mental health and like taking care of yourself, right, and like and making sure that people have the resources they need to be able to get the help that they deserve. Like I will fucking blow that horn all day and night, right?
But that was around the same time that Massimo and James were making up that if you really, really love us, that we could never air.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So we do cut things out of this show.
Yeah. I don't remember what it was, but I remember how it felt. And that's
I remember. Yeah, exactly. There are times where like off-color jokes just kind of happen and we're like, you know what? Like
I've told a few.
We have the power to edit this out.
We should
There
not
was a
hear
moment
that.
There was a moment in the Paradil's solo episode where he lost all hope. We cut some snippets out of that one.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's just like for the better. Because like again, like we're not trying to give out those kind of vibes or that kind of energy, right? Like that's not our goal.
We're only trying to get so real with this fantasy.
Exactly, right? Like we're like at the end of the day, we're just we're trying to tell jokes and we're just trying to like just like play up like the fantasy and like the silliness of all of this stuff, right? Like this is not something to be taken seriously or emulate your life after. Like, please no, God no.
Which isn't to say also we would just like do Massimo's character again the same exact way with that response.
We've learned our own lessons from that.
Right. We do want to get input by people who are, actually, meaningfully offended by some of the things we say. We don't
because we're not exactly like
meaningfully offend people.
Yeah, and we're people who would absolutely like learn from those actions and be like, okay, like we'll fix our language or do what we got to do to like make sure that we're not disparaging anybody because like that is never our intention or what we set out to do because like we want D&D and like what we do like this is something that is and should be accessible to everyone and we want to like we want our community to reflect that too. Right. So that like, no matter who you are, right. You are welcome with us. Like we love you and appreciate you for the person that you are, as long as you're not having said that. Okay.
Having said that, we've been doing this show for over 6 years and putting out over 300 episodes. And statistically, we're going to do some stuff where we're grasping at characters or just like creatively going out of bounds inevitably. And it's going to be something that, maybe we should have rephrased or we should have.
Yeah, like some things may or may not age
more
well.
sensitively.
Some things may or may not.
We have a child assassin that became a major character,
and that was always something we had to really make sure that we danced around and were careful about, right? Because like Boris, I mean, while the actress is an adult, right, the character is a minor, and so like we want to make sure like we're not touching anything that's like close to anything that's like sensitive because like that's not like just no. I don't want to explore any of that bullshit. Like just no, keep that shit far away from me. Right. And so, like,
hearing Frank Reynolds in my head singing "Do not diddle kids."
Right. there's our It's Always Sunny reference again.
Boris and Spanx far away from each other.
Very far.
Right. You know what I mean? So, yes. Although they were in the same episode, so shit, we failed.
I don't think Spanx Mahoney, even Spanx wouldn't cross that line.
No, of course. No. Again, because we have boundaries as people and like topics that we are just not willing to explore because there's no, like, we don't find that entertaining. There's nothing to joke about with that, right? Like the things that we joke about or that we, draw analogs to are things that we can have playful fun at because sometimes it's helpful to be able to explore like story arcs or story concepts that are in some ways analogs to real life to be able to explore these things in a healthy or safe way where we could just kind of laugh about it because the world's really fucked up, y'all. Right. So like this is our opportunity to be able to just like add some lightness to our lives. Right. Yeah. That's the whole point of this.
I personally feel like you can mine a joke out of literally any topic. But some topics you can't mine a critical mass of comedy out of.
Yes. You're right. And I think that's really, I think that's a good capstone to this sort of thing, right? Of like our conversation here is like,
a good capstone to this podcast is some things aren't funny.
Some things aren't funny.
And you've been listening to the Hapless Heroes for the last 7 years.
If you like us,
where the joke's on you.
Shit. I know that we didn't get to absolutely every question in this, but I think we addressed the vast majority of them, and probably ones that people didn't even know they had. We just started talking about this stuff. I'm not sure if anyone else had any other things that they wanted to personally address, or if they saw things that we didn't get to. I want to leave this space here open for the Q&A for everyone else. Is there anything else we wanted to cover? Anything else we wanted to touch?
What was everyone's favorite character to play? Not role play, but like combat mechanically.
Oh, interesting.
Murph. I loved Murph. Murph was so much fun.
I love Paladins. Jarrell was just really great. And to be one of my first characters ever.
Yeah, for me, right? Because again, I had mentioned I was the forever DM prior to this. So Felix was like the first character I actually got to play from start to finish. So I think he'll always be my favorite character. Because he's just my ego personified and exaggerated.
I think, what was Liger Silverschleuder? He was like a barbarian kind of class.
Yeah.
I think just the dynamics of that being so different from everything else was fun to play. And
he was a bugbearish monster too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a bugbear.
Mm-hmm.
He's bugbear barbarian of some sort. And just because that whole set of dynamics was so alien.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Melvin was another real highlight.
Another good one,
was like the first magical character that I played.
So and mechanically, like, just very interesting character to play too.
Unlocking a whole different world of things.
Yeah. How about you, Nicole? Probably Boris, I would assume. I mean, you only really were able to play Boris. Yeah. But I will say, because I'm going to use this as an opportunity to also call out a character that you played that was one of my personal favorites. But you never really played them necessarily in this campaign.
Oh.
But it was the character that I saw you play the first time we ever played D&D together, and that's what got me. I was like, so we were just friends, and I was like, holy shit, like I really love the way this gal plays D&D, and it was Fluffy the Bonfire Slayer. Can you just give everybody, give the audience
like a TLDR about
just a TLDR of Fluffy the Bonfire Slayer?
So we were going to a convention for a video game. Or like a meetup thing for a video game, and we're planning a D&D one-shot for it. And I had very little I had played a little bit at that point. I had started a campaign in a group that like 3 sessions had played and fizzled out, and done like a single, like very short one-shot. So like I knew a little bit about making a character sheet basically and playing like level 1. And then we went to this thing. And when I was designing my character, I think it was a bard, right? If I remember correctly.
She was a bard, yes.
She was a bard. And I wanted to name her Fluffy the Bonfire Slayer and have her be absolutely afraid of fire. And I also wanted her to play a recorder for her instrument, which is not an option in the handbook. And I asked you about that because I didn't really know what the limitations of that were. And you told me only if I actually brought one and learned how to play it. And I committed. Damn it, you did. Heavily to that character.
You brought a fucking recorder to this
And
session.
I learned how to play Despacito on it.
Yes, you did.
That's a great story.
I guess if
that character was her main language was common, and her second language was
Valley Girl.
Yeah, California Valley Girl. And she would not take her high heels off, so she had a like -5 reduction in her movement speed. And would straight up leave a fight if there was a fire to try to put the fire out. I committed super hard.
That was her character flaw. So I was giving out a lot of inspiration during those things. And like we had an audience for that because like everyone else at this convention was like really like interested in this like one shot we were playing. So like I was starting to get audience input, from like, hey, what happens here? Or like what's the result of this? Or what does this thing do?
What items do they need to collect in order to do this spell?
Yeah, that was a hell of a time. That session was cumulatively over the course of the 2 days that we played at a 20-hour one shot.
Oh right.
Yeah, in fact, if you listen back,
talking about that now.
If you listen back to some of the episodes, I think it was around the time of freezer beers. Like the beers that we were drinking were the leftovers I had from that trip because all the Canadians who came over for that were like, well, we don't want to bring this back over the border. So here, Fran, here's all your fucking beer. And so like I had all this beer, and so like that was for the podcast from then on. That's we also iced you at that point in time, Zach. I remember that was around that same time.
There was so much Smirnoff ice.
I got iced. Yeah. I got iced by a deuce of Smirnoff Ice, which I chugged during the episode.
Oh yeah, because they were the big bottles.
All right,
I have that. There's a video of that somewhere.
If you really like us, find out what episode number was.
It was like in the 70s or 80s, I think.
You can hear me get progressively drunker.
You were absolutely blasted by the end of that episode. Yeah, and then I also remember like for those episodes, I was DMing and my voice was gone. I think I was playing Felix, but like my voice was absolutely shot. So like at any point in time, you can actually find the time in my life when I went to this convention, right, and came back after DMing for 2 days straight, and like my voice was fucking shot. Like my voice was cracking. Like I could barely talk. Like I sounded so different, and that's the explanation for that. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I just wanted to. I wanted to talk about Fluffy the Bonfire Slayer during this episode before we ended it because I just wanted to make sure that because that was my introduction to you playing D&D, and I was like, holy crap! Like you're pretty good at this. Like that's a great fucking character.
I'm a silly idiot who commits to roleplay sometimes when I find something I like in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
If you liked us.
Yeah, as I say, yeah. Any other questions that anyone had, or are we? Or is this? Or do we feel pretty good about this at this point? I mean, we've been doing 2 hours now. Like we hope we answered the majority of your questions.
You're welcome, audience.
And like I said, if any more filter in or whatever, like we may do another one of these. There's probably going to be some other stuff, I guess, that happens. Again, in the interim between this campaign now being over and us getting the next one going. So just like stay tuned. We'll keep everybody updated. Like I said, join our Discord. So if you like us, please find us on the internet. Join our community on Discord. We exist on social media, and those social media things really just exist to point you to the invite link to this Discord server. We would love it if you came and joined the conversation. I mean, it's really where we've built our community. It's where most of our conversations are happening. It's where we got all of these questions submitted to us from. So just a quick shout out. I'm just going to just list all the usernames of all the people who were asking questions really quick as a thank you to all of you for being part of this community. But Thessie, Bashless, Jake, No Time to Reload, Tenless Soul, Altair, Bulldog Timmy, Sparky, Garrett, Geo Hound Dog, you as Weak Sauce, like all of you, thank you so much for participating in this and for asking all these wonderful questions. We really this really just like this. We were so excited to get into some of this stuff. So I was like, wow, everyone's got so many great questions. I'm really looking forward to digging into this stuff. So, we're still going to be active on that Discord server. Find us on there. Be a part of this conversation with us, and just join us for as we get ready to embark on the next phase of the Hapless Heroes podcast. And that being said, if you really like us, we'd love it if you left us a 5-star review on the podcast service of your choice, whether it's a rating or a review or whatever it is. Just help us get more people to listen to this show. Tell a friend, give them a real life review of hey, I know this D&D podcast and they're pretty cool. That counts too. All right, get people to listen to our show and join our audience, because now's the best time to start, because we're about to start a brand new campaign, and I can't think of a better time to introduce someone to the Hapless Heroes than when we're getting started from the ground up on a whole new adventure. And if you really like us, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/haplessheroes. For the low price of $5 a month, you can get access to all of the bonus content we have created over the last 6.5 years. Lost episodes, bloopers, between two episodes, Hedrick's songs, James's notebook. I mean, the list goes on. It's just an archive of all of the bonus content we've created over the years of this show that never really, made it to air in the normal podcast. So we'd encourage you to be a part of it. All the money goes back into keeping this show running, paying hosting costs, upgrading equipment, and it really just helps us, make a better product for you, honestly. So we appreciate all of you who've been donating to us so far. We hope that you've liked all the bonus content. I've made it even easier for you to listen to that now, because as you sign up to be a Patreon, you'll get a private RSS feed link that you can actually just load it into your favorite podcast player, and all of that stuff will just show up like new episodes for you, just like your favorite podcast does right now. Yeah, so again, patreon.com/AtlasHeroes. Check it out, see if it's worth your hard-earned dollars, and that's all I have to say about that.
Give us your money, and if you like us right now, you like us Sally Field, and the whole deal. Post up in a parking lot with a folding table filled with grape jelly-filled powdered sugar-covered donuts, and grape juice, and little Dixie cups, and drink all the grape juice out of the little Dixie cups and get all messy. Oh yeah, you're supposed to wear just a white undershirt too, so you just drink the red grape juice and just dripping all over the front of your white shirt. You're getting gross, messy, and you eat the donuts, and anybody passes you say, I like grapes in the processed form of jelly when it's filling a donut, and I like the juice. Listen to Hapless Heroes as well. That's why I'm doing this in the first place.
Well done.
Also, you should be dressed like a raisin.
Oh, okay, yeah. A raisin. Wait, are you wearing... The raisin is wearing the white undershirt.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah. So you're in a bulbous raisin costume
while doing all this stuff, but then you have
the
white
raisin costume is wearing the raisin costume sized white undershirt.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why you need all the grape juice.
We've done it.
Yes. Right. Oh wow, clever. You're a raisin. And I guess you're gonna say, "Oh, I love grapes." Because I was one time, and now I'm a raisin, so now I'm trying to reconstitute myself into
the juice
a grape
that I've
again.
lost.
This is the juice of my fallen brethren, which I will use as sacrifice for myself to attain my true form. I'm a grape.
Are you a grape vampire? Are you
listen.
And then when you decide you're done, you have to throw the grape jelly into the middle of the street and scream, Stella!
Yeah.
All right, kids.
And then amend that with, just so it's clear, I am a grape vampire. So, Stella, just so it's clear, I am in fact a grape vampire. If anyone is asking, and it's not, you're confused about that one fact.
All right, listen, I'm going to go ahead and just take the car that we're in here and slam it full throttle right back into the garage.
No, Fred, that means it's over.
And I'm going to say, outroing my cast and my friends for the evening, we've had with us tonight John playing himself.
Until next time.
Zach playing some version of himself.
I am me.
Nicole being herself?
I think I found my character.
Mike exploring the concept of self.
Mm-hmm. It's been an honor.
And Dave playing the role of self.
Myself, because that's what I call myself.
It's very meta.
And me as a fully realized self of a podcaster.
Self-actualized.
Francesco, I love you guys. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening to this show. Like I said, stay tuned. Join us on Discord. Keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. We will be back on the airwaves soon enough. We can't wait to share with you what we have in store. We'll see you
maybe next week if we think of something.
Hell yeah, probably. Maybe next week if we think of something. Maybe in a few weeks. Who knows? Like,
we can't shut up about this stuff. So
we really can't. So bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now,
everyone.
So long.